Hey there, this is Pat Ennis of Ennis Legacy Partners. Welcome to the Exit Readiness Podcast. I'm here with my co-host Walter Dial, CPA and tax partner at GRF CPAs and Advisors here in Bethesda, Maryland. Our mission here on the Exit Readiness Podcast is to provide you, the business owner, with subject matter expertise on topics pertaining to building sellable business value and for planning your eventual exit from the business. We want to help you build a business that's sellable or transferable and then exit successfully on your own terms and conditions. And our topic today is how to increase business valuation and decrease owner's responsibility.
That's right, Pat, and we are very excited today to have with us John Brown, the CEO of the Business Enterprise Institute, which is a leading innovator and training organization in the exit planning industry. In fact, Pat and I have both been certified as exit planners by BEI, and we're very grateful for John and his team and the work they've done to advance exit planning as a discipline. But John is much more than just the CEO of BEI. He's also an author, speaker, expert commentary, and really, in many ways, he's recognized as one of the founding fathers of exit planning. So, John, thanks so much for joining us today. We are super excited to have you.
It's great to be here.
So let me ask you a question. Pat and I are familiar with your story, and we know that back in 1977, we can even think back that far, you were working with business owners as an estate planning attorney. So what did you see? What were your experiences that kind of gave you the impetus to found BEI?
Well, Pat, my background even before that is I was the son of business owning parents. So I was really raised in a business owning environment. And as I started co-founded the law firm in Denver in 1977, I naturally started working with more and more business owners. But at the time it was, just the normal business work as well as estate planning for business owners. I had not even thought of exit planning or even the term exit planning back then. But eventually, as the years passed, I would have more and more owners asking for some advice dealing with the future of their business or their future in the business. And from there, I realized that a lot of smart, successful owners were really smart and successful in their business, but they had really no idea on how to transfer ownership and exit their business successfully. And I discovered that I wasn't the only one who didn't know anything about that. None of their advisors were talking to them about how they could help their business owner clients develop a business that could be successfully transferred to a third party or their kids or their management team or somebody else. So that was really the start of it, was really just working with a lot of business owners and learning by trial and error how to help them create a successful business.
Yeah, so John, in putting together, designing and implementing a comprehensive exit plan for a business owner, we're going to have elements of personal readiness and also business readiness. Today, and of course, I think you would agree that when you were doing estate planning back in the 70s and the 80s, and still do, of course, a lot of that is personal readiness. We could put it in that category. Today, what we want to really focus on with you is your experience in building value or sellable value, transferable value, which we would all agree is foundational and central to a successful exit, because an owner who has a sellable or transferable business has many more options for exit. And so that's what we'd really like to talk about today with you, and just hear from you based on your experience in the past, but even, how things may have changed in the last 5 to 10 years in regard to what a sellable or transferable business might look like. So first question, what should and should not be the business owner's role in creating business value?
Well, that's sort of a time-sensitive question. I mean, when a business first starts, the owner is the business. I mean, none of us start our companies. I didn't start BEI with a management team in place. I started with just me. So that's how probably all owners tend to become business owners. They start the business for the most part. Now, again, there might be some second generation owners and so on, but we are used to doing everything ourselves at the beginning. And we need to transition that role of being all things to everybody to an important role perhaps within the business, but not a vital role. And the example I sometimes talk about is when I was doing a lot of exit planning in the late 1990s and early 2000s, an owner came into me. He'd been referred into me, and he said, we met, and within 30 seconds, he said, I'm really interested in selling my business, and I think it's worth $4 or $5 million. Can you help me? And I said, I think I can probably help you, but let me ask some questions, which, again, as all of us as exit planners know, asking the right questions are crucial to being able to help a business owner. And he said, well, I have about $1 million of cash flow or EBITDA. I figured there's a 4 or 5 multiple I can get if I sell it. So can you help me sell my business? And I said, well, let me ask you just a couple more questions. Well, it turned out I asked him about his business. He had a software business in terms of installing software, common software across a business's platform. So his clients would be back then clients like General Electric, and General Electric would want to have a software installed in all of their offices throughout Europe and the United States. And he would do that for them. He would go out, he would get the contract. He would negotiate that with GE. He then had 25 to 30 consultants that would then all around, they would be located in Europe and the United States. They would install the software on a sort of a simultaneous basis. And I said, that really sounds like a great business. You must have, in addition to 25 or 26 consultants as employees, you must have a few more in the home office. He said, well, not really. The consultants are just that. They're independent consultants. They're not employees of mine. I just hire them for an engagement. And as for employees in my home office, I just have a part-time assistant. So here was somebody who had a business that was generating $1 million in cash flow because he exclusively went out and got all of the work. And he had no employees. If he didn't bring in more business, the business would disappear and he would have no employees in any event. So he wanted to know the value of his business. And I said, Bruce, the value of your business is zero if you leave it. There's no value at all to somebody else. And so that's kind of the answer to your question, is that if the owner is everything to the business, the owner leaves, there's not going to be a business to transfer. So consequently, there's very little value in that company to somebody else.
So, John, let me ask you something, because Pat and I, our sweet spot is kind of businesses in maybe the $5 to $20 million range. And I would say, probably the biggest drag we see on the value of these businesses is just the extent that they're dependent on the owner for, almost every aspect of the business. What do you think? And, we've talked to the owners about this, but there seems to be some hesitation on the part of the owners to really take the steps that are necessary to, for instance, build out a management team and start delegating responsibility. Do you think it's more, it could be a few things. One is they may not, trust their employees to handle more responsibility. They may not want to spend money, like for incentive compensation or to hire a manager, that type of thing. Or they may just not really believe that what we're telling them is true. What do you think the issue is as far as getting an owner to make changes in this area?
That's really a good question. I think it's just a matter of continuing to inform them of that need. What you might do with clients like that, if they're thinking of someday selling their business to a third party, because that would be the only possible exit path for them if they don't have a strong management team to transfer the business to. I would sit down with maybe an investment banker or a high-end business broker and have the transaction intermediaries, as we would call them, talk to the owner about the need to have a business that can continue and to produce cash flow and income without the owner's presence. I mean, that's the definition of transferable value, is the ability of a business to continue its cash flow even though the owner has left. Maybe they've sold, or maybe they just decide to retire. Because without that, there just is no value. And so it may be that you need to bring in a professional who specializes in determining business value in a third-party sale transition process. Because every investment banker will emphasize at least three value drivers. One is the ability of the management team. The second is to have state-of-the-art operating systems. And the third universal value driver is to have a diversity of the customer base. And, none of those can really be well done by just a single business owner or two business owners.
Yeah. And so, John, let's stay on this topic here for a second regarding the owner and everything running through the owner, because one of the key points that we try to make and try to implement with clients and engagements is that an investment in the key, you just mentioned the management team capable of taking the company to the next level, and helping the owner understand that the way they're going to create value is by having those key employees or management team in place, having invested in them appropriately, and not the owner, that they're going to create value through that management team and the key employees, and not the owner. It seems like there is a common misconception that because of the owner and all that the owner brings, that the owner can actually create the value. When in actuality, it's the key employees of the management team, right? You want to speak about that a little bit?
Sure. And I think, sometimes I think part of the problem owners have in letting go of control is that they don't want to become less important. I think they worry about that. It's more from a personal perspective than a business growth perspective. The businesses we represent, or our members, I should say, represent in a sale scenario or transfer scenario, they seem to understand the need to develop a management team independent of them. Sometimes it's important, however, in talking to the owners to explain that they can still have a really important role in the business. It's just that they can't control everything, because if they do and they leave, there's just not going to be value. I think they tend to understand that, and I don't see that as a huge problem. I do see as a significant problem the fact that they are sometimes fearful of giving up control because they won't have a sense of purpose and a sense of meaning within the business. They're afraid somebody else is going to take over all of those relationships. So I don't know if that really answers your question or not.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it does.
That's what I see in talking to our members.
Yeah.
I was just going to follow up on one thing John said, which I thought was really important. You mentioned that if you're in a type of company like you described, where everything is running through the owner, really your only option is a sale to third party because you don't have a management team in place. So I just think it's interesting, and Pat and I talk about this a lot with clients. It's that the stronger the business you have, just how many more options are available to you. So not only are you increasing the value of your business by bringing a management team in, but now you have a possibility of a sale to insiders or maybe an ESOP. Pretty much the entire every one of the sale options is now open to you as you build a strong company that is not dependent on you.
Oh, that's exactly right. I mean, it's a strong business, regardless of the exit path the owner wants to go down. They need the same kind of a strong business that, begins with, good cash flow, continuing cash flow, increasing cash flow is what investment bankers tend to look at, but they also understand that cash flow is being created by a management team apart from the owner, or maybe including the owner, that is competent, that is motivated to continue to grow cash flow, because cash flow doesn't just happen. So third-party buyers understand that if you're going to sell the business to insiders, well, they are the management team, whether they're kids or outside individuals. They have to be strong enough to continue the business without interruption to its cash flow when the owner starts to back away. So it's just critical that owners focus on, I would call, the basic elements or value drivers of the business, and concentrate on growing those value drivers and protecting the business as they do so from maybe a key person leaving and taking customers or employees. So it's both motivating and keeping key employees, but also making sure that they can't leave and harm the company. So there's a lot of moving parts for business owners to consider. And that's the reason really that we started BEI, which was to train and support advisors all around the country and Canada in helping owners understand what they need to do, and then helping them accomplish what they need to do to create a transferable business.
Yeah, so John, you've mentioned a few key value drivers thus far. Of course, we've talked a lot now about the management team and the importance of it. You also mentioned state-of-the-art processes, systems, technology, diversity of customer, and then a second ago, good cash flow, solid cash flow. What I'm interested in knowing is, you've been doing this for a long time, and there are other value drivers that we focus on as well. I'm interested in knowing, have you seen a change in just the last 5 years or so in regard to value drivers then, maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago versus value drivers today? Have you seen any change in what actually drives the value of these small businesses?
So my answer is probably a little different than you'd expect. I don't see a strong change in which value drivers are the most important, but I do see a real sea change in who's asking those questions. And what's really happened in the world of ownership transfer with closely held businesses is the rise of private equity firms. It has really created a significant difference. And here's why. PE firms are well-funded. They're buying more than half of all of the businesses that are sold to an outside third party. There's an oversupply of money in the third party marketplace. So as a result, the PE firms who have money, but they have no management at all. So when they go in and they buy a company or an interest in a company, they don't have operating systems. They don't have any customers. They don't have any management. They have to rely on the business they're acquiring to supply that talent. Now they can they can supply financial strength and maybe even a good CFO and things like that. But apart from that, they bring nothing to the table other than money. So that has really created more of an opportunity for closely held business owners, but only if they're well prepared. Strategic buyers, which used to dominate the third-party marketplace, they usually had some type of management. They had operating systems because they were kind of merging the acquired company into their operation. It's not nearly as true today as it used to be. So there's a greater responsibility on the part of planning advisors like you two to work with their owners to develop the fundamental value drivers. So, for example, cash flow is a measure. Having cash flow, you measure that and apply a multiplier to that to determining value. But cash flow is created by the management team, by the operational efficiencies of the business, by having a diverse customer base so that if we lose a few customers, it doesn't impact our revenue. It's more of the fundamental value drivers that are really critically important. That's what the PE firms are looking for.
I think that's a lot of what we're seeing also. That's a really, really good point, though. Let me ask you another question. One of the things that I really loved about the BEI training was that they spent a fair amount of time talking about incentive compensation. And I really haven't seen that in most other trainings that I've taken. But it's interesting that the clients that we work with, I mean, you rarely see incentive compensation.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, and if you do, it's like you ask them, do you have any type of incentive compensation? Oh yeah, we have a bonus plan. And at the end of the year, it's like, hey, we got $10,000 to split up. Let's just give it to people, evenly or whatever. Mm-hmm. So even if they think they have a plan, it's not a plan that is any way incentivizing their team to go out and increase the value of the company. Why is that the same thing that you're saying, generally speaking?
Yeah, absolutely. And I see it not because of owners that we talk to, because BEI, our clients or customers are other advisors around North America. They're not really the business owners. So when we do our training, which is every week to business advisors, to your point, they are familiar with some of the terminology that's being used to motivate key employees, but they don't understand how it works or how it benefits the business and the owner or how it's designed. So there's a huge understanding gap. And let me just rattle off some of the types of incentive plans there are so that the listeners can get an idea of the range of, without explaining what they are, a range of what's available. But there's non-qualified deferred compensation planning. There's phantom stocks. There's stock appreciation rights plans. There's sale of ownership. There's gifting of ownership. There's stock bonuses that are available, and a variety of other tools. And all of those can be designed so that the key employees receive something of value to them only if they achieve a benchmark or performance standard, which, if achieved, grows the cash flow or the value of the business such that the owner is going to be able to leave on his or her terms down the road. That's almost the essence of exit planning in the BEI way, and of creating transferable value, because we're shifting the responsibility for growing value and cash flow from the owner to the employees and the staff that they have and the operating systems they're operating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what's amazing is if it's done properly, it's not like it's costing the owner any money, because the management team's hitting their goals, which means the company's more profitable. Right. And then a portion of those profits are going to pay for the incentive. So it's just a win-win all the way around.
Well, and that's really critical. And in addition, let's say that as a result of the incentive plan, the growth in cash value is $100,000 and we pay $30,000 of that to the management team. Well, that's $70,000 more for the owner or the business, less the bonus, the $100,000 less the bonus paid and deferred. But it also increases the value of the company by some multiple of that increased cash flow, 3, 4, 5 times. So it's really a double win for the owner to do something like this.
Okay, John. So we know that you have a tight schedule today. We don't want to. You've been very generous with your time, but I want to ask you to do one more thing for us.
Sure.
Pretend you're speaking to 1,000 small business owners right now in an auditorium or somewhere, and you've only got a minute or two to give them 3 points of advice. 3 just takeaways, key takeaways, next steps, whatever you want to call it, that's going to help them and play. What would that be? Those 3 things.
Well, the first thing would be, that's a good question. Nobody's ever asked me that before. The questions I would ask would all be around in preparing the owner in the business for eventual transition. So it's one, to realize that they're going to need to leave sometime. Secondly is the need to determine with accuracy what their goals are for the business and themselves, as they move through ownership transition. So what does life look like for themselves after they leave the business? What does the life look like for the business after they leave the ownership? Because that's very important for a lot of owners, is to make sure the business can continue and benefit the community and so on. The second thing I would focus on is to have an accurate understanding of the value of their resources today. So what's the real value of the business, not what their guess is? What's the value of their outside investments? And then the third thing I would focus on is there a gap between the amount of money needed to achieve all their goals and aspirations and the resources accurately determined that they have on hand today? And if there is a gap, we'll know how much that is, and then we can go about developing a plan to grow value of the business. But if we don't do this first part accurately, and that means using a financial planner to determine how much money is needed and how much money can be generated from the existing investment resources. If they don't have a valuation expert who can tell us with accuracy what the value of the business is today, we can't create an exit plan, at least not one that's based on fact and reality. That's where I would start every single exit plan.
Yeah, well, and actually, I mean, that's step one and step two of the BEI process, isn't it?
Exactly, and I think you two know something about those two.
Well, I hope so. A certain organization is certified as to do it. So, so just in summary there, 100% of business owners are going to stop being business owners at some point. And so realize that as soon as possible. And then begin to plan for what life after the business is going to look like. John, you know these statistics, but most business owners within 2 years of leaving the business are miserable because they didn't do what you just advised them to do, and that's to put the necessary work into thinking about what life's going to be like afterward. Because let's face it, they've had a significant impact on a lot of people, right? Their employees, their customers, the community, their family, of course. And if they don't think through how to replace that, golf and fishing and everything else for a couple of years can be a lot of fun. But then after that, where's the meaning of life? So thinking through that and having someone skilled and to help you think through that. And then, the quantifying the business and the personal resources and quantifying how much you're going to need to do everything, to do that big life plan after the business, and if there's a financial gap. So an accurate financial gap analysis, including, Walter, an accurate valuation of the business, because oftentimes that's missing, isn't it? So, John, thanks so much. Can't thank you enough for coming on. Appreciate your work and the work of your team there. We're going to have Elizabeth on again soon, and then Jared's scheduled to come on too.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
that's great.
Later
Your
this year.
listeners will be tired of us soon. Then, I
don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so. So, John, thanks so much. Oh, one last question. Is there anything that you or BEI would like to promote while we've got you here?
I don't think so, because I'm assuming your listeners are mostly business owners. What we like to promote are the continuation of the great work that the two of you are doing, as well as our other members, because all of this exit planning and I know this to be a fact because we've done thousands of exit plans. It's not going to be done if the owner doesn't have a guide, a facilitator, someone to initiate discussions and to create a written plan to allow the owner to exit on his terms. And that's what you two do for your business owner clients. And that's the key to exit planning. If there's not a guide to do this, an owner will never get through the process on their own. They don't know what to do. their advisors have a partial answer, but they don't have the big picture that you two have. So I just really encourage you to continue to do this podcast and continue to work with clients. And it's great that you two have formed a team to do that. One other thing I would suggest that you two think about is to offer the assessment to everybody who listens to this. Our members use that, that 16-question assessment to determine what the owner considers important. They use that all the time, and that's a great discussion initiator and a great way to engage business owners.
Well, that's fantastic transition for me here, John, because we actually offer that. Listeners can access that assessment at nslp.com or at exitreadiness.com, and as well as a sellability score assessment. So again, John, thank you so much for joining us today. We really, really appreciate it. You heard it here, listeners, from someone who's been doing this work for a lot of decades now and has a ton of knowledge, ton of experience. You're gonna leave at some point, 100% sure of that. So start thinking about what you're going to do next. Think about and quantify how much it's going to cost, how much everything you have is worth currently, and if there's a gap. Those are some easy steps to get started. And then if you want help in maximizing the value of your business or planning for your eventual exit, you can reach Walter at 301-951-9090 or me at 301-859-0860. You can also access resources at exitreadiness.com, grfcpa.com, and nslp.com. So thank you for listening, and until next time on the Exit Readiness Podcast, this is Pat Ennis and Walter Dial signing off.